how to take your practice from 0 to 7 figures in a simple, tested and proven system. Hey guys, my name is Stefan Gospodinov. I'm the founder of Practice Peak, and in today's video I want to show you how the exact steps looked like for my personal practice. And now we teach our practices how to do that, is to go from 0 to 10k, from 10 to 30, from 30 to 50, from 50 to 70, from 70 to 90k a month, and 100 plus a month. The most important thing is without the business having to rely on you. Yes, it sounds too good to be true, but guess what? If an idiot like myself can do it, so can you. So if you stay until the end, this is where I found it became the most challenging, is taking the business between 50 to 100k. Because what the challenges were at 0 to 10k a month, those challenges could not be solved with the same solutions when we tripled and quadrupled the business. This video will help you regardless of what point of the journey you're at. And the most important thing is knowing that I did this in about 5 to 7 years under a certain framework. You can plot your own journey in this framework and see what you need to do at the exact step of your business. So I know this video will create a lot of traction. A lot of people ask me questions, and I'm here to debunk and have full transparency of what it takes, what it requires to get throughout these evolutions in your business. Now, of course, it's not about the numbers, but it's a metric to show you how do you scale and how do you build systems whereby you have a truly successful business. Because success in the space of what we do equates to more happy patients, more lives changed, and ultimately healthier and happier communities. This is why I believe some of you are finding it quite challenging, because you got into the profession of chiropractic and going into a clinic owner with the best intention, but you realize that running a successful business has nothing to do with being a good chiropractor, regardless of what people say. So I'm here to debunk some of those myths and show you the exact steps that we took to get from 0 to 10k a month to start with. This was for me 7-8 years ago. What I found was that all I needed was just to be a awesome practitioner. So this is where you need one practitioner, you need one source of new patient acquisition channel, and that could be just referrals, it could be just health talks, it could be just Google, it could be just Facebook. This thing here, you just need to be a good chiropractor and to get consistent results, because people will talk about you. Naturally, if you're good at what you do, people will talk about you. However, I challenge people to run their practice when they're in these early stages here, 0 to 10k a month, the way you intend to run your practice when you're doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and so on, and when you have a big team. Because the biggest bottleneck I find in smaller practices is that people don't think like big businesses, so they act like my numbers don't matter. I don't need to know how many people started care. I don't need to know my KPIs. I don't need to know how many cancellations I get a week. I don't need to have an SMS reminder for people to show up to their appointments. I am amazing. They will do it. It kind of works, but it gets a little bit messy if you want to take it to that next level. This for us, this took like less than a month actually, because we had a proven system and I just kind of showed up and every single patient was starting care. I knew what I was doing, I was good at it. So we decided to take it to the next level. And this is when you want to have your potentially first CA to go from 10 to 30k a month. You need someone to be onboarding patients, you need to have better systems, you need to have welcome forms. You probably need to start thinking about having more than one new patient acquisition channel. That means you cannot just rely on one source of new patients coming through the door, because ideally you can have a way to multiply your time by hiring an associate, by training them, by onboarding them. So think, what would that require? For us, we have KPIs, so we know how they perform. But way before the KPIs become relevant, we need to have scripts, we need to have an onboarding process, we need to know where to hire these people from, how to hire them, how to incentivize teams. Because sooner or later, if you don't do a good job as an associate, patients find out. You might get everyone to start care, but if you're truly not a good chiropractor, people will drop out, people will complain, you're not going to get good reviews. So the truth, I always think, it becomes apparent. It's the same when you're building a team. if you don't have a good pay structure, if you don't support your team, if you don't train them, if you don't onboard them, if you don't mentor them, sooner or later, they will leave, because why would they stay? So we invest a huge amount of time, energy, and resources in our teams. This is where it gets more tricky for most people. So let's say you're making 15, 20, 30K a month, you have your first associate, you've got 1 or 2 CAs, you've got 2 or 3 channels of new patients where you know where they're coming from. The next step for me was quite challenging, I remember, was having 2 to 4 DC chiropractors, having more than 2 CAs. And this is where we talk about part-time CAs, by the way. We have this, in my business, we have this formula where we'll have 3 or 4 CAs who are all part-time and they complement each other. So if one is ill, the other one can substitute them. If one of them has a holiday with the kids in the summer, the other one can be in the clinic. So it works really well for us, rather than having 1 full-time CA, to have 2 part-time CAs. Rather than having 2 full-time CAs, have 4 part-time CAs. And this is when you need to start thinking, how do I generate more consistent streams of new patients from different sources, from different channels? I would strongly recommend going for the lowest hanging fruit first. This for you might be in-house spinal screenings. That's one. It might be Facebook lead gen. It might be organic Google or Google PPC. But again, in my mastermind, we have, I believe, 12 or 13 comprehensive campaigns that are tested and proven over and over again to generate new patients, which is why we're able to do about 100 and, I know exactly the numbers. We did just over 107 new patients per month on average for 2024. And this is the thing that people don't get. This next one is SOPs. It's impossible for you to be making 50K a month if you don't, as you're scaling, if you don't have standard operating procedures, if you don't have policies. Why? Because these things, the SOPs, they create consistency in the results and the outcome in your business. Let me explain what I mean by that. I have a CA that comes in. They're amazing. I train them for a week, absolutely incredible, crack on. She handles the phones well, appointments, bookings, cancellations, scheduling, payments, and so on. I'm now scaling and I'm hiring my 3rd CA. I do the same thing. I kind of give them some training for a week. I don't really do anything else after. Maybe not even have training, maybe just get the first one to train them. And I realize the phones are not answered correctly. I realize that half of my patients don't have future appointments. I realize that they don't even talk about the cancellation policy we have. I realize that the chiropractors are complaining because they're not sending the patient in the room on time. And what does that mean? That means the standard wasn't set. There was no clear boundaries of how we operate because there was no standard operating procedure for that particular thing. So it's very, very, very important. In fact, if one of my private clients, we spend probably 3 to 6 months just working in their business on creating SOPs for the chiropractors, for the massage therapists, for the CAs, for the managers. And that just helped standardize how you practice so you don't become the police. We have policies for that. How you answer the phone should be consistent every single time from a CA's perspective. How you take payment from a patient who is just committing to a plan should be very similar with most patients. What happens if someone calls to cancel? Well, you should have a certain way to proceed, to use the process to make sure that you don't have inconsistencies, because inconsistencies in your business will create headaches. Therefore, scaling is very difficult, near impossible. You might hear from the tone of my voice I get really passionate when we talk about this kind of stuff, but I cannot describe to you how important it is if you want to have a proper business, if you want your business to be scalable, for you to have standard operating procedures, SOPs. Then it gets juicy and it gets tricky and it gets, in my opinion, exciting if you have followed these steps, because you've taken your business to 30 to 50K a month consistently, you've got a couple of associates, you've got some good front desk teams, you've kind of hacked the way to get new patients from a few different channels. Now you're starting to also understand SOPs. Brilliant. You don't have to do anything different to scale. Why? Because you're building a system that works. You're just scaling the system. So getting from 50 to 70K, yes, you might have to hire another associate. You might not, depending on your business model. You might want to keep the same front desk team tight. We did for a long time. You might want to now start doing things like I'm going to add additional sticky points or additional complementary services to my main thing. That might be massage therapists, that might be rehab specialists, and you absolutely need to start thinking about this special person in your team, and that is your practice manager or clinic manager. I've made some mistakes with practice managers in the past, and I've made some good choices, and I can tell you that the practice manager becomes the face of your clinic, it becomes your right hand in your business, and it buys back half of your time. If you're spending 60 hours a week on your business, well, you'll be spending 30 on the business if you have the right manager and you'll have the same input, meaning you'll still have the same results. But you have bought 20, 30, 40 hours of your time a week with things that the manager is now able to do. Now, this comes with other headaches. You've got to think, well, do I have an organizational chart? What does that even mean? Well, that means go and watch my previous video, first of all, because we made a whole YouTube video on how to run your practice and how to add organizational charts, but meaning that you don't get the massage therapists and all the chiropractors and CAs to come and speak to you. No, they speak to the manager. And then the manager may give you 1 or 2 reports a week for you to know exactly what's happening in your business. So this is when I strongly encourage people to have organizational charts in their company. So for us, again, I spend maybe 15-20 minute video showing you guys how that looks for us, but you absolutely need to have the right people on the right seat. The second thing is your SOPs need to be even stronger and need to be more comprehensive. You need to have a lot more new patient acquisition channels, so more getting new patients from other sources, and that's where cost per lead and cost per acquisition becomes more expensive, but that's fine because you need it. You need to start having weekly catch-ups, weekly meetings and accountability with your team, and you need to start thinking about automations. This is when you start to think about optimizing your softwares, KPIs. If you're not using my KPI success tracker, you are missing out, I promise you. It might be somewhere in the link below. Download it for free. Get the training video on it. I've spent like 10 minutes explaining exactly how it works. 70 to 90K. You're entering the big boys zone. This is where you need to start putting things in perspective. You cannot micromanage. So for us, when we were doing 70 to 90K, I probably had a team of 12 people maybe. And that's when you need to allocate and delegate to the right person. And you need to incentivize and to pay them freaking well. So do you have a head chiro? That chiro might be in charge of another 3 to 5 chiros. Do you have a head CA who is offloading the things from the manager? And the manager has, again, she needs to, or he or they need to take it to the next level in terms of their personal development because they will be facing with more challenges. So that's why I've written down here, you need accountability systems. You need a system for recruiting. Do you have a predictable way to get new associates every single year? If you don't, speak to me. We recruit a lot of people. We're very good at keeping people because we're fair. Team culture, massive one. I work with a company that they hired me just to improve the culture of the team because they found that they couldn't recruit people and they couldn't keep people. So once you start understanding how that works, then business becomes interesting, becomes effective, and you can leverage your time 100 times. You still need your organizational charts, you need SOPs, and your training library of everything you're doing, because if you have a team that is performing highly and you get someone new, it's a massive jump. So you've got to have a predictable way to onboard people. To multiple new patient acquisition channels. We have probably 20 that we currently use. Got to have the weekly meetings, and you still got to think, how do I automate more without sacrificing the patient journey, what we call it, without sacrificing the results of the patients. And then finally, and this is where we're at, this is where I got to, I was actually, maybe I did it a bit earlier. I've shared this in previous videos where I tried to fire myself between 50 and 70K. And then I realized that the business was almost collapsing because I didn't have these things in place. I didn't have automation, systems, SOPs, the right management in place, the right organizational chart, and the business almost collapsed because it was my fault. But the last 2 years, when we make 6 figures a month, I am no longer providing the service. I do not treat clients and patients anymore. I work on the business. I have management meetings. I figure out creative ways to bring more business, to make the business better, to provide better service for our clients, to mentor the chiropractors. So the time is spent completely differently. But if I was to stop, the business will run exactly the same way, because it does not rely on my hands and me providing the service in the exchange for the monetary value that patients give you. So guys, this might be one of those videos where it blows your brains because you think, oh my goodness, I've got so much work to do. But guess what? This is what it takes to run a highly impactful practice that does not rely on the business owner to work in it. If you choose to, some of you absolutely love to practice, that's brilliant, but you have a choice. How to get beyond 7 figures a year, I'm not the right person to teach you because I haven't done that myself. But if any of you want to find a way to get from 30 to 50K, from 50 to 70, from 70 to 90, I can help you because I have walked the exact path. I've helped a lot of clinics, and what we find is everyone has the same challenges. It doesn't matter where they're on the journey, it's predictable. We have 5 clinics now and we find the same consistency in this trajectory, and we find that actually it's like a recipe. Me cooking pasta, if I change the recipe every time, the pasta would taste different every time. If I follow the exact step by step and I actually do the work, well, guess what? It pays off because the pasta tastes great every single time I cook it. So if you want to find out more, click somewhere in this video. There will be a description where I show some free training on how we generate lots and lots and lots of new patients. I would love to help you. If I can't, I will still guide you the right way. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video. And please, 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 subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button, and leave me a comment on what else you want me to make a video on and what else I can help you with. Thank you.